and thank you for stopping by Rugged Mountain Homestead. My name is Sarah, and today I wanted to have a little chat about something that some of you are going to say, hey, I've been reading about that, I've been thinking about that, let's talk some more. And other people are going to probably roll their eyes and say, here we go again. So grab your coffee, or in my case, a cup of tea, and let's have a seat. One of my big passions now is pantry preparedness, and there is a reason why that I am so passionate about that. And I will give those reasons here in a minute. But for those that are a bit skeptical and say, you know what, we don't have that problem anymore. There's no reason why people need to be stocking up like this or canning, but there is. I wish at the time that I had gotten more knowledge, information, things like that from my grandparents. Both of my grandparents were a product of the Great Depression. They are both, or they were both, part of the greatest generation. So after World War II ended and everybody went back to work, and you know, the United States just took off in production, and then you had the generation of baby boomers, which my parents belonged to. There was just, the United States was just this land of plenty. You could get anything you wanted, however much you wanted, and nobody really worried about anything. And I think probably at that time, a lot of the people from the greatest generation who were then raising families, they did not want their children to know, you know, in depth of the hardships that they went through, ration lines and, you know, not having enough to eat, and some people starving, people that were wealthy in soup lines, people planting victory gardens and having backyard chickens, not as part of something they were interested in or they wanted to get started, like overnight for survival. They learned how to survive with the bare minimum. And even after the Depression ended and World War II was over and my grandparents were raising their family, that never left their mind. And my grandmother, they were always prepared. And, you know, they always had, you know, she was always canning. My grandfather always had a big garden. They were always prepared for that moment should they run into a crisis again. And so with my parents' generation, the baby boomers, I think that really started going by the wayside because no one saw a need, and everything was just so plentiful. If you just needed it, you ran it to the store and you got it. It was always there. There was never a threat of it not being there or going hungry. So a lot of those things, I felt like were starting to become a lost art because I hadn't heard too much about them, and we never, you know, mended our socks or anything like that. You know, you got holes in your socks, you went to the store and got new socks. So I say all that to say this, that I was interested in the, you know, homesteading for what it is. I believe in self-sufficiency. I believe that I am first and foremost responsible for myself and not another entity. So as I started gleaning for more information concerning, you know, how to do things, one thing just kind of led into another. And, you know, you learn one skill and you're like, okay, well, what would I do about this? So that's where I started. I was living a suburban life, and we shopped like a lot of people every 2 weeks, and you know, just kind of went about our daily routine. When you're working a lot, full-time plus, you know, you're earning a nice pay so that you can pay other people basically to do a lot of things to take care that you need to take care of your life. And I didn't like that. And I had never liked that, but it was at the time, and it felt like it was a necessity. I needed to work those amount of hours. I had to. So we got to a certain point, and Dean and I both said, you know, enough. I had already been doing things while learning, reading, seeking out things, homesteaders on YouTube. that were already had the skills and had the experience. And the first thing I started doing was cooking from scratch. Now, when you learn to cook from scratch, you learn instantly about a pantry because you have an enormous skill when you can cook from scratch, because you know how to make something with minimal ingredients. So once I started really getting into learning how to do that, and then baking my own bread, which takes some time to learn, and then I started a small garden, and then that grew into making things from the products of that garden. My biggest thing that year was salsa. I learned how to make a really good salsa that Dean just ate up. I couldn't keep it on the shelf. And then from having all those ingredients, I learned about canning. And canning opened up a whole new world for me. And from that point on, I learned about the importance of having a food pantry. Because even though we say, and I've heard people say it, oh, that'll never happen again in this country. You know, we will never see loss like that again. Well, to someone who said that to me, I beg your pardon, because we are already seeing still supply chain issues. I cannot remember a time in my life as a young girl, a teenager, a young mother, ever going into a store and seeing shelves empty of anything. And I really kind of believed it to a point that, oh, that'll never happen again, until the pandemic hit. And I believe that changed things for a lot of people. And I know it changed things for us. And the biggest thing I was like, okay, we're in the midst of this turmoil now. And I thought, well, you know, it's time for my regular shopping anyway. Let me just go and stock up a little extra. So Dean and I went into a wholesale club, and our jaw literally hit the floor. You could not find flour or sugar or, you know, any of the staple items. I'm not even going to go into toilet paper. We all know about that. So then there was this massive shortage of canning jars, canning lids. You couldn't find them anywhere. And then when you did find them, they were like 4 times the price. I know that I was desperate, and I had a small garden, and I had, you know, these lids are one-time use lids, and I paid like $75 for 6 boxes. And normally those boxes are like $2.50. So not meaning to get off on a tangent there, but just showing you the importance that woke me up, that I was like, wait a minute, you know, this isn't right. And what if this isn't really going to correct itself really anytime soon? More importantly, I never thought I'd see it in my lifetime. What if it were to happen again? You know, we still hear about, you know, ships being, you know, stopped at port, not able to get in. You know, there's fuel issues, and we could seriously have supply issues again. I don't want to have that fear in me ever again. And I don't want my family to experience that. And I swore I was going to go into overdrive, learn everything I could. And as I called it back then, I was not going to get caught with my pantry with my pants down again. So I will show you how I learned. And I show you this also because I know in another video, I showed that, you know, Dean had gotten the shelves and, you know, put everything up. And we do have a pretty decent supply for not having had a garden for the past year, and for have just stored what we had left. But this is pretty good for Dean and myself, but it would never last us a year. And that is my whole goal, is to have food storage supply that would last us 1 year, and with the ability to share with our family. Now, the first rule that I learned about a pantry was that you cannot keep a good, true pantry by shopping every 2 weeks. And so I learned about food storage. And there are things that you are going to need, like flour and sugar and salt and the basics, the very, very basics that a lot of people will learn about. If the older the cookbooks you go, the better. And so these two right here are very much from scratch cooking and recipes. You don't see too many of the things that, you know, to shop for of anything with pre-made ingredients. This is from, I believe, the 50s, and this is the 60s. And I have learned a lot from those books. I did know how to cook, and pretty well, but I did use a lot of packaged things, you know, and something said, called for beans, 8 ounces of beans, 16 ounces of beans. I opened up a can. I never, ever, ever had dried beans on hand. Dried beans are something you do need to have on hand. They keep forever. I have several different kinds right here. I keep northern beans, kidney beans, pinto beans, and black beans. You can do so much with each of those. You can combine some of them for different recipes. They last a very long time. And this is not a really large supply. These came in 5-pound bags each. So I need to work on that. But while we were moving, you know, I had to do the best I could, which is now why I'm working on restocking my pantry. But sugar, flour, salt, I keep at least 25 pounds. Sugar, you know, kept properly, you can keep it in a 5-gallon bucket, food grade bucket with a Gamma Seal lid, so it's oxygen tight. You can throw in a couple of oxygen absorbers. You're going to keep it for a very long time. You can do flour the exact same way in a 5-gallon bucket with that Gamma Seal lid. You can either throw in some oxygen absorbers or you can throw in a couple of bay leaves. Bay leaves work really well too. I'm also a big proponent of keeping rice. Rice is another basic that you'll want to keep on hand. So I do have some rice here, and I do have several other types of rice that I keep. And then I also keep those in 5-gallon food grade buckets. Oats, as you can see here. Again, I do have more in a much larger container, but this is where I keep things out and handy so that when I'm cooking, they're right here. And also popcorn. This is multicolored popcorn, and you can, you know, in a pinch, if you had to, you could grind it into a meal and, you know, cook with that. You can also pop it for a great snack, and it's a filling snack, and it's a great source of fiber. And I always, because I haven't had a garden in a year, I try to keep a lot of tomatoes on hand. Tomatoes are a base and a source for so many different things, so many different meals that you can make. And so recently, as in yesterday, we picked up our Azure order, our very first one since February. I'm not going to show you the whole thing. I don't think there was a big interest in that on this platform. So I'm going to show you the things that I got specifically to help restock my pantry. Is it close to being fixed? No. But it's much better now, and we're more on the way, and I'm feeling a little bit better. Because at least right now I know that if a crisis hit, Dean and I are good for a good 6 months. But I want to be good, plus, like I said, be able to help my family should they need it. Let's get on with this, and I will show you here what is important in the pantry. And right here we have some dehydrated red and green bell peppers. Dehydrated anything, vegetable, is always good because it keeps forever. You can keep it in, I'll keep these in a 1-gallon jar, sealed, and you can pick them up, throw them into a soup, a stew, a dressing, anything. They'll reconstitute themselves, and it's wonderful. Dean and I do have a dehydrator. We do dehydrate things from the garden. We also will take the tops of different leafy greens, carrots, things like that are completely edible. We will dehydrate them. I will grind them down into a powder. Those things are full of nutrients. I call it greens powder, and I throw it into a little bit of everything, whether we're having soup or smoothies or, you know, it can be a garnishment, anything. I also keep on hand always several different types of pasta. I have a couple of large containers now, but these I keep egg noodles, spaghetti. This one is rigatoni. I keep on hand elbow macaroni and penne pasta. I find those are the easiest. They keep a good long time. You can make a variety of dishes. And one of these days, I am going to learn how to make my own pasta. So then I show these two that I got from Azure. And the reason I show these is because fermented foods are extremely important. They keep forever, and they are very good for your gut health, and they're super easy, and why not if it's all those things? And so I have some of these from Azure, and the reason why I order so much from Azure is that I order everything that is made in the US. It comes from small local farms. If you're a huge corporation, Azure doesn't buy their product. They like to stick to the small farms, United States, and I believe in that. Obviously, I believe in that. I want to support the farmers. I want to support those people who are working hard every day to help us a better life. Also here, I have two different types of salt. This salt here, to be honest with you, I'm trying for the first time. I've heard a lot about it, and it said that I could not only use it for cooking, but for pickling, and also I can use it in my canning. I do have canning salt, but I just have one box, and I haven't been seeing it real regular, so I went ahead and got a bag of this. And then I have here a 5-pound bag of sea salt, which is mainly used as a table salt for cooking. Canning lids. Canning lids made in the United States. I haven't tried this brand before, but it is $60, and I believe it has 60 lids. I believe I paid like $17 for it, and they're going to come in handy. I'm going to use them, and I'm going to always grab them when I see a box because I won't forget what that was like, and I don't ever want to go back to having the concern of, oh, I have food here, but I can't can it because I don't have any lids. Onions stored well, not in a plastic bag, but I just got these, so I was trying to show you want to store onions in a cool, dark, dry place, but usually in a crate or something so that they can get some air. These are really great organic onions. They're huge, and I'm probably also going to chop some up and flash freeze them and put them, in a bag just so I can have them quick on hand for cooking. And same thing with potatoes. You don't want to store them in a plastic bag. They're stored the same way. And potatoes are extremely, extremely good for you. That is the one vegetable that if you had to, you probably, for a decent amount of time, could live off of. They're full of fiber, they have the starch, carbohydrate, they have everything that will really kind of keep you going, more so than any other vegetable. So when I plant a garden, we're always going to have lots of potatoes. And then coffee. I bought several of these. Everything, that you buy from Azure is in bulk. So this isn't just me thinking that I'm buying one of these and restocking my pantry. It's an example of a bulk item. So coffee. Coffee is an important part of our day. And as long as I can get it, I'm going to have it. Yeast. Yeast is another thing during the pandemic you could not find anywhere. Thankfully, I had already had some, but it was one of those things.
So a pound of yeast will last you a pretty long time. So what I do is I'll put some of this in a pint mason jar and keep it in the refrigerator, and I'll put the rest in the freezer. And I know some people are like, chocolate chips, why do you need chocolate chips? Why is that a staple in your pantry?
It's a staple in my pantry because I think that when times are hard, when we went through lockdowns and things like that, and my daughter was living at home, it's hard. It's hard emotionally on people. You're used to going out and seeing people, and she was in school at the time, and having some comfort food around, being able to make a batch of chocolate chip cookies because you can cook them from scratch, or to, just make any little thing to kind of bring some comfort. And it does help to be able to sit at a table with a glass of tea, coffee, and some cookies and just talk about things over. I truly believe that because I used to do that with my grandmother all the time. Every time there was a problem, there she was at the table with a coffee and cookies in the cookie jar.
I like arrowroot powder, but I got cornstarch because for a thickener. You can also use chia seeds. Chia seeds are a thickener, but they're also a great source of omegas and fiber. And I will use these for making granola, homemade granola. You can also use them to make pudding and different things like that. I'm not a huge fan of canned meat, but I do believe in having it on your shelf. I feel a little differently about canned salmon. I don't mind having canned salmon on hand with make salmon cakes, or it's a great source of your omegas and protein. You also need to have some good fats. We have here coconut oil. I use this in place of anything that calls for Crisco, and it doesn't leave the coconut flavor in it. I also use this if I'm going to grease any of the baking dishes. I keep extra virgin olive oil on hand, and could not do without apple cider vinegar. I get the raw apple cider vinegar with the mother, so that this is absolutely pure. You can use it for a variety of things, from canning, cooking. Mostly I use the white distilled vinegar if I'm going to use that for cleaning. But these are just a few of the things that I will use to restock my pantry and get back on board. I also have some sourdough going on, some sourdough starters, so that you can always have bread. If you have flour and you have water, you can always have bread using sourdough. But I'm redoing my pantry. It's getting better, but it's nowhere near where I want it to be. But I'm hoping that by this next growing season, it'll look much better. So I have several of the 5-gallon buckets with the gamma sealed lids, and you have oxygen absorbers. I have a lot of canning equipment in the very back. That's where I'm keeping all my canning equipment. And also, because a good point is that because we ran out of lids and things like that during the canning season, the growing season, I invested, because it is an investment, in weck jars. And they are like the old time jars of these old canning jars where you had the rubber gasket and the glass lid. They are the same, they make up the same way, and then that way you don't need to use a disposable lid every single time. I also bought a thing of rubber gaskets just to have on hand, so that if I did, you can still can in those. You can still can in those jars. So I wanted to make sure that I had something like that on hand as well. So this is basically what I'm doing. That is why I'm passionate about being prepared. I think anybody that's lived through a crisis may have a different mentality about it. And if you're thinking that, I don't need to worry about that, look where we live. We live in the land of plenty. Look again, because, this world, this country, all countries, they're run by humans, and humans are fallible people, and bad things can happen. So I just want to know that I'm doing everything that I can to make sure that we are prepared in any circumstance, whether
It'd be weather. Say, we had a big snow dump, couldn't get out for a while, that I'm not going to panic. And I don't want you to panic either. So thank you for visiting with me today and listening about pantry preparedness. It's not a bad word. It's actually a very good thing. So thank you for watching. Thank you for taking an interest, and I look forward to seeing you again on the next one.